Vielen lieben Dank, Daniel Podmirsek. Dankeschön. Thank you very much. Das? Ja, am besten. Vielen Dank. Ich habe mir jetzt eins von denen geschnappt. Ich glaube, jetzt versteht man mich etwas besser, denn ich freue mich sehr, euch jetzt das nächste Panel anzukündigen. Es wird ein sehr hochkarätiges und an dieser Stelle sei auch einmal erwähnt, wenn ihr Fotos macht, Videos macht, Stories, was auch immer auf den sozialen Kanälen, dann wäre es natürlich ganz großartig, wenn ihr unsere 4Gamechangers Accounts verlinkt oder die Hashtags 4Gamechangers, 4GC, 4GC oder 4GC19 dafür verwendet. Ja, eine Mini-Umbau, also es ist keine Umbaupause, weil ich rede einfach durch, denn es erwartet uns jetzt, wie schon angekündigt, ein hochkarätiges Panel. Super Portion Startup Power. Menschen, die gegründet haben, um sich globalen Problemen anzunehmen, die derzeit existieren oder uns in Zukunft erwarten werden. Ein spannendes Thema, besprochen und diskutiert von sehr, sehr spannenden Personen. Durch das Panel führt euch jetzt gleich der Founder, ich rede ein bisschen langsamer, damit der Aufbau fertig ist. Founder von Freecom, Software-Ingenieur und Innovator, Dejan Jovicevic. So, jetzt habe ich den Namen auch noch. Entschuldigung, nochmal. Den hast du dir schöner verdient. Also, so einmal noch. Founder von Freecom, Software-Ingenieur und Innovator, Dejan Jovicevic.
An mich oder? Ja. Also mein Name ist Dejan Jovicevic. Ich wünsche mir, ich wäre Founder von Freecom, bin Founder von Brutkasten, ist Österreichs Startup und Innovationsmedium. Wir haben aber den Founder von Freecom auch mit uns und ich darf heute mit euch gemeinsam mit unserem Panel das Thema Social Entrepreneurship, Social Enterprise beleuchten. Was ist es wirklich, welchen Impact die Entrepreneure auf die globale Wirtschaft haben, auf die globalen Probleme, die wir haben. 20–30% dieser Startups sind einzuordnen in die Social Impact Startups. Das Thema ist heiß und wir wollen ganz genau wissen, worum es da geht und welche Chancen wir da haben. Wir werden das Ganze auf Englisch führen. That's why I will switch to English now and invite all the panelists on stage. We'll begin with Abdul, software engineer, works at MHP, and he is the founder of Freecom. Welcome and applause. We have with us Felix Modemann, Business Development Manager at Orcam. He is enthusiastic for artificial intelligence and assistive technology and very happy to be part of Orcam to help handicapped people becoming a more independent life. Welcome. We have Ilak Diaz with us, a social entrepreneur working to empower communities in the Philippines and around the world with several impact projects that they have, a real businessman, and we're very happy to have you on stage. Applause. Very well known to Austrian community, Hermann Hauser, Fellow of the Royal Society of the Institutes of Physics at the Royal Academy of Engineering, and Honorary Fellow of the King's College, a real entrepreneur, real investor. He helps a lot in Western Austria to enhance entrepreneurship. Hermann, it's great to have you here. Thank you and applause. We have Alexander Reimsayer with us as a consultant and coach. He discovered his passion to mentor partners growing their business, to listen their problems, help them develop with collaboration methods, help them transform their businesses, and you have quite a few examples of successful entrepreneurship with you. Great to have you on board. Thank you for being here. Also very well known to Austrian society, one of the jury members from 2 Minutes to Million, Martin Rola, CEO of Good Shares, social impact investor. Martin, great to have you on board. And last but not least, Markus Raunig, Managing Director of Austrian Startups. Austrian Startups also encourage entrepreneurship. They want to make it as usual as skiing in Austria. Great ambition, great vision. Markus, welcome on board, on stage. So, I have the honor to be the host of this panel, and the topic is very, very important. But we also figured out that the term of social enterprise, of social entrepreneurship, is sometimes misleading. So we want to clarify it at the beginning. Is it about charity? Is it about donation? Or is it about sustainable businesses? So whoever wants to start, Martin, maybe I start with you. What is social entrepreneurship? Can you help us understand this term?
I think social entrepreneurship, that's the wrong word. I think it should be sustainable entrepreneurship, because sustainable means much more than just acting social. It means acting also in an ecological correct way and in an economical correct way. It means making profit. Yeah? So all sustainable business must make profit too. Just that it takes longer and it doesn't die too early until it reaches its goals.
So is it a charity business?
No, it's the opposite.
Does anybody else think it's a charity business? No. Social entrepreneurs among you, how do you define yourself? What would you explain to your parents? What are you? What are you doing?
Well, you know, the United Nations, OCHA, with the refugees, described it properly. It says, the UN builds the camp. The refugees build the city. So you could see the difference of just handing out tarpaulins and you know, food. But the refugees, they get second-hand vehicles. They make transporter systems where you pay. They find medicines where, you know, and it grows. So you could see how much charity will make and how much, you know, building a city would make. And it's all down to sustainable entrepreneurship by the people themselves. So it's very important to understand that after the money is burnt out, what happens next?
And then the moment comes when the enterprise should develop its own life.
Well, the purest form of really knowing which is a charity and which is a social price is when you become obsolete, when the social entrepreneur becomes obsolete and the movement grows regardless if he's in the center of the problem. If you're the center of the problem, then you are the problem.
But when we talk about social entrepreneurship, there is a statistic, 20 to 30% of startups would qualify into this category. On the other hand, shouldn't every business consider the social impact? Shouldn't every business consider the ecological and environmental, so to say, aspects? What is your call on that?
That's what's happening right now, that most of the normal businesses find out that the consumer is waiting for a sustainable impact too. So there is no future business, also in normal business, without acting sustainable.
So does the term then still make sense, or should it become the new normal? Or are we going to continue talking about social and impact entrepreneurship and investment?
There will not be a big difference in the future.
Okay. Herman, from the investor's perspective, do you invest in social impact startups as well?
Well, I really like Martin's definition of sustainable investment, because if you look at the objective criteria that really make a difference to humanity, they're manifold. I mean, I'm a deep tech investor, really. But when I invest in deep tech solutions, in the back of my mind, I have the Sustainable Development Goals. That's why I'm wearing my UN badge with pride, because it's only if the long-term results of these deep tech investments are aligned with the 17 Sustainable Development Goals that for the first time in the history of mankind, 100 nations have signed up to. I give these talks about AI, etc., and one of the conclusions that I've come to is that in many ways, the most important thing that we have to agree on are these goals, because once we've defined the goals, everything else then follows from the goals. But if we can't agree on the goals, we go our separate ways.
Awesome. Now, there are big challenges to tackle, be it climate change, poverty, water issues, plastic issues. Are we living in an illusion when we think that startups, small entities with a few founders, can solve these problems? Or do you believe that startups can actually have impact? Marcos, representing startups in Austria, what is your call on that?
I'm completely convinced that they can have an immense impact. It needs big thinking, and you need to really have that big thinking from the beginning and have the idea to really change something big. And I think there's already examples out there. For example, I think the search engine Ecosia, they have already planted 50 million trees. And there is another startup that has helped more than 10 million people get drinkable water. So that's definitely possible. And I also want to go maybe back to what we were discussing before. Is it a charity or is it not a charity? Because in the end, Austrian startups, what we are doing is a charity. And sometimes I'm a bit jealous of sustainable entrepreneurs, because raising money is easier, all the regulation is in some way easier. It's not easy to be a charity. For us, it makes sense because we have this role in the ecosystem where it really makes sense. But in the end, I think it certainly doesn't hurt that sustainable startups want to earn money too.
Let's stay with the examples of impact that startups can create. We have many social entrepreneurs here on stage. Abdul, maybe I can ask you about what do you do, what kind of impact do you create?
For us in Freecom Startup, we try to focus on solving the communication problem for areas without internet connection or mobile connectivity. We developed a software can build alternative local network where people can use in case of disasters or simply without good infrastructure. In my opinion, I see startups exactly like any kind of business. It starts with very small idea where just simple people, creative people try to recognize problems around them and they fix it or they find a solution from the resources around them, what makes it so powerful actually. And they have a super powerful power, I call it flexibility. Like I work in a big company where they move like a giant robot. They need a lot of decisions and a lot of complex orders to move and do something. Startups can do it in a second. They are so flexible, they can change their whole method of solving the problem, seeing the different perspective, they can scale so big. And it all starts from the very, very small point where they just simple person recognize a problem around. So
let's stay on this small point. How was it in your case? Did you think I have to create a multi-million business, or did you think I have to solve this problem because I would have an impact on society? What was your idea and the initial spark?
The main problem started when I recognized how big the problem is in communication in case of disasters or a problem. For example, I will simplify it far from disasters. In a stadium where so many people are gathered, the connection is going so slow and sometimes it's lost at all. And in this case, you can see how powerful the connection we have and how weak it is when we are all together in one place. So this is where the whole idea started, to build something that when more people are connected, they make it stronger. This is how mesh networking is based on. But we try to be more creative and use alternative methods like ultrasound, where we can build alternative connection.
So without needing the strong wireless connection with
Exactly, they combine each other. So it doesn't mean that we will just throw away the whole connection because it's already so advanced. We will just make a bridge between this gap when the connection is not that good and the established system already.
Felix, I think it's very convenient that you're already wearing your impact product. Maybe you can explain us what is it, what do you do with it?
Of course, so I'm very happy to be here at OrCam. We're developing a very small camera that has only the weight of 22 grams, and we are helping blind and visually impaired people to get more independence. So we all belong to the 96% that are very happy that we have sight, but there are 4% of the people that are visually impaired and blind. And with the demographic change, there are a lot of people who are losing sight because they're getting older and older, and we all will survive our sight. So when you take a look at your daily life, in the morning you need to change your clothes, you go to grocery shopping, you want to read a magazine and a newspaper, and for visually impaired and blind people, this is not possible. And with this small device that has a camera here in front and a speaker in the back, it recognizes colors, it recognizes faces. You can save your friends and it will tell you your name when I can see you. And this is a very small product that has so many functions where you can get independence through your whole life. I can also show you how it works because it's just about gesture functions. So right here I have a text, and when you're visually impaired, maybe you feel or you see that there's something in front of you, and all I need to do is just point at the text, and then it recognizes my finger as a gesture, and it starts reading automatically.
Wow.
And when I want to stop, I just use the stop gesture.
Which technology is behind this?
For the reading function, it's OCR, but we have a very, very great algorithm because, for example, this is a very easy text, but when you look at the newspaper, you have a lot of articles. But our algorithm can make a very great order where it reads first, then second, and not only line by line. So it starts with an article, reads the full article, and then starts with another one.
Would you categorize it as a health tech product, as a med tech product, or where do you see yourself?
Yeah, we are a company that is doing artificial vision technology for the health sector. So when I just take a look at our background, our founders developed Mobileye. And Mobileye is the leader for autonomous driving and collision avoidance systems. So we are helping that there are not so many crashes on the road. And our founder, he is an aunt and she's visually impaired. And in 2010, he decided now the technology is mature enough, the microprocessors are getting small, so he is able to use the technology that is very similar to the technology that is in your car. A camera in front, it can see that there is a car in front of you, it brakes, and here we have a camera just for visually impaired and blind people. And with the reading function, it is not only great for people who are visually impaired, also for people who have dyslexia. So worldwide, we have 10 to 15% of the people who are suffering from reading difficulties and reading fatigue. So you're getting tired of reading. And there are more and more older people. And we just want, as a very new and fresh company, to help the people to have more independence and also to enter into the job market.
Great. We have Alexander here, Ilak here with Liter of Light. Explain us what impact are you doing in the Philippines and around the world?
I was just so amazed being so close. It's really reading. With the advent of the United Nations declaring it's the newest May 16 as the International Day of Light, it raises awareness that there's this 1.2 billion people without light. And so making a study, I'm actually an alternative architect, and that solar lights, the business model right now is it's supposed to break down. It takes 40% sometimes just to import it. So you import it from China and India. And so in disasters, it's very hard to scale up. So what we did, we said, why don't you just build it by hand? Why don't you empower women cooperatives to build it, operate it, lease it out, make mobile charger, and then lease out street lights. We can make this pop-up solar companies. And so what Liter of Light did was basically teach people how to use simple available materials, and at the same time community built. We started in the Philippines. It could be as simple as PVC lights, taking plastic bottles. It's something that will last for 5 years. We use what do you call that? That new smoking, I keep on forgetting it. Vaping. I'm not a smoker, obviously. But vaping, we use cell phone batteries. We receive 5 tons of batteries from hotels that need to exchange, to take out their emergency solar lights every year. And so we grew from the Philippines to 30 countries, 1 million house lights a year. But the thing there is the women are the one that rent it out. And so the business model really for us is we give them all the materials, and then their husbands have to come from the provinces with vegetables or fish to the wet market. They dump everything and come back with empty baskets. So the women would order, and we put it inside the basket, and it would go all over the country. And so yeah, in 30 countries, we're in wet markets, and we provide all the parts. The important is they have to build it and repair it themselves in the village. So they can repair it there without having to bring it back to the city. And so this has grown, especially in disaster areas. We work in Pakistan. The street lights are basically maintained. And at the same time, let's say you have 5 houses there. The women would say, look, if you pay me $3 every month, I would keep your street lights operating. And so the income stays in the village rather than goes imported, patented, and expensive. And so yeah, so that's what we're saying. That the future is really, if the people cannot replicate it and fix it without you, then it becomes something where you're always needed. And for helping 1.2 billion people, you cannot have 1 or 2 companies or 3 donor nations solving this kind of company, this kind of system. So we're also going into, with the Raspberry Pi and the technology, we're now connecting all the street lights to become something where they can download e-libraries and stuff like that. So these are kinds of things where the women themselves, so moving from basket weaving and local products now into micro solar solar rental systems. I was just saying that, moving from kerosene to solar is one thing, but a lot of people don't see that these kind of solar companies where they design their products to fail in a year or two so that they can earn again and sell again, I think is morally not correct. Although it's sustainable, sometimes you have to look deeper into the sustainability of it.
Okay.
So the last thing is this, it's empowered by the youth. So we have 2,700 young people that we work with young people, with women cooperatives to help build this. And sometimes they buy from somebody else, which is great. We don't have to sustainably provide them. Thank you.
Alexander, you help startups develop their ideas, transform in digital products. Futurebuilt is your company. Can you explain us about the impact you're doing and what kind of products that are solving the big global problems came out of your projects?
Yes, thank you. I'm a consultant for companies who really want to find new business models. And one actually I'm going to go into deeper tomorrow on this deep dive stage at 3 o'clock. So be there to a little bit explore more the project. But it's about having access to drinkable water. You have that in catastrophic situations like the cyclone Idai is a very good example where in Mozambique, where I'm born, you have lots of water all around you, but you can't go in a shop and just put water in a bottle. And anyway, this is for me some kind of strange thing that you clean the water and then you put it in a plastic bottle and then you get more plastic into your body than before. And this is what we've solved with a company in Germany where we try to collaborate with other companies. A lot of things that were said, when you're alone, when you're a startup, can you really change? Yes, I believe so, like you, because we put together a lot of companies together that actually brought a water purification system for Africa that we have now in Tanzania in place. And at the same time, also what Ilak said, we are creating a business model for women that carry the water 20 kilometers to it. So with the machine, we really go to the source and we supply 300 liters of water an hour with just a small 30-kilo machine.
You said something interesting. We put companies together. So the question would be, do you believe that a single startup can solve the global issues, or do we have to collaborate? Is this a new era of, let's say, non-competing but collaborating to tackle the big problems?
I think collaboration and eco-partnership is the thing to solve the problem. I don't think that only startups or only corporate companies can do it alone. We know from if you do sports that in team you have a much bigger impact, and that's where I believe that also a solopreneur like me can make a change by just being the one guy that can do the bridges to all other companies. And I see that through our development. I mean, I consulted first this company in Germany, but then at one stage he said, like, Alex, take it as your project and make it bigger. And so I started to collaborate with a lot of companies, and now we're even talking to big companies in Germany and the States that want to really participate in that community. And I strongly believe in that.
Maybe I can add to that. It's not just startups and corporates. I think also the customers and the users have a big role to play in the future. I think the power has transformed a lot from within companies to the network without it. So you all know the saying that the biggest hotel company, Airbnb, they don't own any property. The biggest taxi company, Uber, they don't own any cars. It's really, you can use your users. And I think, for example, that's also a great example that you say the lamp can be repaired by the people who are actually in the crisis area. That's a very essential point, and that's, I think, what you have to think through when you do your startup, that you can use this potential to actually get also your users on board and make them an asset for you and for the impact you want to achieve.
Martin, what's your call on that? Is it so to say, the calling of social entrepreneurs to change and tackle these problems alone? Or do we put too much pressure on them and actually we all need to work together towards this decision?
I think they are finding each other by themselves already. So this is what I'm learning now, because I'm getting in contact with a lot of young entrepreneurs. Everyone is thinking about the impact he's having, maybe social or ecological, and people start to collaborate by themselves. There is no need that anybody organizes it. And I thought maybe you forgot one thing. It can also not only be the governments who solve all the problems. It has to be a collaboration between governments and big traditional companies and startups. But this is happening already. So I'm very confident that everything already is on a really right way.
Okay, then let's talk about investment.
I wanted to ask Felix one question.
Yes, please go ahead.
Felix, but there's a business model too. So you want to earn money with the camera.
So right now our focus is not on earning money. It's so for example we have around 300 employees and we are a very young company, and 80% of our employees are working in the R&D department. So we are very focusing on our technology to be better, to grow more, and of course right now our focus is not to make profit.
Long term it is.
But on the long term, yes. So the first question was if social-orientated companies, is it a charity or not? I think it's not a charity, but when you have a great product, and for example in Austria or in Germany, our customer, 80% of them are getting our product with 100% funding from the health insurance, then of course it is possible to also make a business model.
But this was going to be my question, especially to Herman and you, Martin. When you evaluate an investment into, let's call it social impact startup, do you apply the same metrics that you apply to your other investments, or are you, let's say, less strict on the KPIs and the numbers?
Well, one of my mottos in my life has always been fun and money. And people sort of understand the fun and the contributing to the world. And people ask me why the money, and the answer is otherwise the fun is very short-lived. So you really have to do something which has a long-term impact, and the only way you can have a long-term impact is if it is self-sustainable. That's why I like Martin's definition of sustainable investments. So that it isn't just something that you fund until the money runs out, but you fund it so that you get a flywheel going, which then keeps going, hopefully, forever, but at least for a long period of time to have a real impact.
But is that enough for you as an investor, or do you expect a certain multiple on return on your investment?
No, we need to have a return, because that's the business model of venture capital, has to have a return.
Martin, would you as well?
Yes. Of course, we always check if there is a return and if the business idea can be profitable, but so that it can be our decision what to do with the profit. If we put it into the company to make the social or the sustainable impact bigger, or to keep it, most of the time, if it is a real sustainable business, of course you put it back to the company.
But is it then a donation, or do you expect long-term exit?
No, it is my decision as the main shareholder or of all the shareholders that we reinvest what we earned into the company or into another sustainable project.
Let's stay with business models, or did you want to add something?
No, I'm just reminded, we did this study with the United Nations when I was in grad school. So do you know that 60 to 80% of your aid money is spent in logistics? So that's what the UN spends it. 60 to 80% of their budget is moving products from one place in the world to the next. Now, it's not that it's a big problem per se, if you look at it that, these are companies, they're social businesses selling products that are needed to constantly supply 60 to 80% of world aid or UN aid. But the thing there is, you're not looking at why are we not building on-the-ground companies where the big white elephant is, how about the locals solving problems from themselves? So I just want you to say that it's great that there is this strength whereby you're helping people in need, but 60 to 80% of humanitarian aid going to logistics for solutions from one part of the world shipped to the other part of the world is a problem in the long term.
How do we solve it?
Empower local communities. The UN does not allow, well, it's only starting now to look for innovations on the ground where they can invest, because the criteria to get United Nations funding is if you're registered with the UN. But the thousands of people on the ground, or the hundreds of thousands of people on the ground, that can impact their own sustainable systems within their country are not being registered to be able to receive this fund. So that's shifting, but I'm hoping fast enough. So you're asking me about charity and sustainability. I think the charity part is becoming something that I don't think even country-wide donations to the UN can keep on going. And it's nothing wrong with the UN. I'm just saying that that's the numbers.
Is it a problem for social enterprise or social impact startups to make huge profits? Or would it be something that we would actually encourage?
I think we should also look at the profit from different perspectives. For example, in Berlin, I've read a study, it says every fifth person in Berlin work in something related to startups. And this is something we should really consider. Berlin was considered as something like poor city, but interesting. Now it's interesting. And the whole economy of a whole city was changed because of startups. In your company, 300 persons are working and they are building new life based on new technology. I think we should look at the profit from this perspective. Most of the startups, they invented something none of the big companies were able to do. And they created completely new businesses where in 10 years before, nobody was thinking such a thing could create new jobs. And I think this is a huge change. And if cities and governments invest more into startups, they can really make faster steps than the big companies. Big companies, they're always afraid of investing in something and then they fail. Their names is very important. Startups are very flexible and they are more creative. They are more young. They can open more job fields and they can create more new technologies and different kind of investments.
Marcus?
Maybe also, I think your question was also implying whether it's whether a startup or an impact startup should be ashamed of doing a lot of profit, and whether it's actually either or. And I think the very essence of a successful impact startup is that you are aligned there, that you are incentivized to, by earning a lot of profit, that this will also mean that you have a lot of impact. For example, there's a great example that is coming up now out of Silicon Valley. It's called Lambda School, and it's an income accelerator. So it tries to solve the inequality perspective. It tries to solve structural unemployment. And what they do is they have boot camps, so 6-month education programs, where people are trained for high-paying jobs. And they don't have to pay anything up front. They will only pay if they get a job of more than $50,000 per year pay. And this incentivized the company to put a lot of effort in a very good education program, and then also in placing the people in companies that can pay so much. So that's a great example how, if you align those two, this can mean a lot of positive impact and a lot of profit for the company.
Herman, you did some very groundbreaking, pioneering work in Cambridge when it comes to spin-offs. What is the role of universities in the ecosystem of social entrepreneurship? Do we have this instrument of spin-offs as one of the tools to tackle the global problems?
Absolutely, because a number of problems, especially in the really big problems in the world, like the transport problem that you mentioned, we're about to see a very fundamental, a new solution with autonomous driving. And if you do the sums, you can have an autonomous transport system in London where we did the modeling, where you have cars that drive themselves without drivers. They're sort of 6-seaters. And if you arrange things for a whole city, you can provide that service so that anybody goes from point A to point B with this personalized service for the cost of a bus ride. But at the same time, you reduce congestion, you provide a transport system for the children to go to school and for very old people who can't drive anymore to drive. So if you look at the social consequences of autonomous driving, left alone the fact that all expectations is that we'll have a 90% reduction in traffic accidents. So these are really new technologies based on machine learning and AI that are going to transform the transport system, in my mind, for the better.
Now, maybe we have some guys and girls here in our audience thinking, I would like to start my company in this field and make an impact. According to your point of view, maybe Alex, because you're doing a lot of digital transformation and business modeling, what kind of businesses are going to be investable in the next years? Are there any technology trends in the field of tackling the big global problems where we could get involved? What do you think?
Well, one thing that comes into my mind is certainly a blockchain, but I want to also answer the question in that way that we should also think about changing our education system, because there were a lot of people saying about, oh, how the jobs would look like. I mean, I'm a father of 3 + 2 kids, so this is quite amazing when I talk to them what they think, what their future would look like, and they have no clue what jobs could be created. And I think when we think about startups, or when I think about startups changing global problems, then education or the blockchain that has kind of the obvious goal of changing also the way we think. It's not just crypto money.
I would just love to add something here because I'm so passionate about this point. In my perspective, we should switch our minds from looking what exists and develop something on it and creating the new field that we will work on. And this is the most the most different thing from the previous generations and our generation. Before, someone studied for a few years and then he worked with what he studied for 40, 50 years, and that's all. I've read some statistics. It said after 2030, almost all the normal jobs we know will disappear, and all new creative kind of businesses will be implemented. In my previous experience as a software engineer, in 10 years, we changed the way we program 3 ways. First, I started studying programming something on desktop or like operating systems. Then we changed to the web development, and now most of people develop on something on mobile. And you can see in almost 10 years, during being students and switching to the normal business, 3 new fields of working was new. And I think we should, as young entrepreneurs, think how we can create new fields of working and investment.
So that's an interesting point. Maybe a question to all of you. Governments are struggling to change the educational system. Should we act as entrepreneurs? Could entrepreneurs develop a new educational system, helping the governments to do that?
I can tell an example if you allow me. There is some idea started as a very small idea. It's called the University of People. It's some kind of university where people themselves and professors volunteer to create some very professional materials, and the degree you get in the end, it's something compared to very good American universities. And one very close friend to me, he was studying that online from Syria and getting a degree from USA. And I think this is a huge a change in the education already.
There is another example that I can suggest. In Brazil, there is a school where you don't have maths or physics or biology. You basically have 18 tiles that you have to achieve. And for instance, they are really led by interesting topics. So Richard, that founded the school, said the students can just go in and they're with every age. So there is no classes anymore. So you as a 8-year-old can be with somebody that is 18-year-old, but you build, for instance, for 45 days a bicycle. And I mean, he said it's so simple. Without knowing P as a number or mathematics, you cannot create a bicycle. And that's how they learn. And I guess that we should really also, in the startup scene, look at the education system and change for the future.
I'm absolutely convinced this will happen, because simply there is at the moment the education system is not producing the right format for the market. So the people coming out of the universities, of the schools, are not fit for the job market of the future. So it's only logical that if the system itself doesn't change, there will be a disruption from outside. And I think there's lots of initiatives already out there. Us as Austrian startups, we are also just getting into this field, and I'm now really getting into maybe doing something like a school skiing course for entrepreneurship, because we looked into how Austria became so good in skiing. Like, this is the one field where we are really world class. And the reason is for sure that we have school skiing courses. And actually, if you look back to the 70s and 80s, there it was mandatory for every child in Austria that they try this. And it doesn't mean that everyone will become a pro skier, but for sure the result was that in the 90s we had races where the first 9 places were Austrians. And that's where you can really have an impact.
And fourth, first 3, never forget.
Exactly. I mean, there's wonderful examples of that.
But with the challenges today, I mean, there's more people that are moving, which are migrating, than even World War II. I mean, there's just, with climate and war and this kind, there's more people moving around. And on the other side, I'm looking at the educational system sometimes. It's, a lot of students, it's good that there's this social venture, because a lot of the best minds, if you want to call it, in my grad school, like my professor was saying, the best minds here are trying to make products for people that are already living well. So I already have a great house, but I just want to make it, the most expensive automation systems. It's not wrong in the sense that, it makes life better, but the fact is, when the educational system is producing the most brilliant minds, and the majority of them trying to look for clients that can pay them, that are already well off. The problem is, what about using some of your brain power, like what's happening here, to serve clients that will never step into your office or not, or reach out to them? And so, I think that the new educational system, you're saying, is there should be a balance, which is if you're going to be successful, I think the good part of success is, can you bring as many people that don't have that success with you along with yourself? The problem is the broad sense of profit, which is return on investment. It should be return on the people that work with you, return on society outside your walls, and the most grievous is you don't create disasters in an environment that will impact generations later. So I think the new educational system, that they should be educated that your brilliance shouldn't be only for the customers that can pay for your brilliance, but it should be, look outside your employees, your society, and your environment.
Great. Time's almost up. Martin, Herman, maybe to give some hints to guys and girls here. What makes a startup with social impact focus interesting for investment?
I'm again correcting you, it is not social entrepreneurship, but sustainable. And that means that there is a way how to earn money with it, so that it can be really sustainable. So this is, but what I've learned that most of the guys who are coming up with a business idea which should have a sustainable impact already think a lot about having a good business plan, because they expect that they will be asked much more intense about where's the profit.
Exactly.
So most of the time the business plans we are getting from sustainable ideas are sometimes better than normal ones.
Is that your experience, Herman, as well?
My criteria is if it has an effect on millions of people.
Perfect. In this way, thank you for discussing. Maybe next year we can wish some ladies to join us on stage as well. That could increase the
great idea.
That would increase the impact as well. And thank you for your time. Thank you for listening. And we have the next act on stage. Thank you.